There is a story that has been told about Lupe Velez for 50 years. You may have heard it. It goes like this. The Mexican Spitfire, Hollywood's most explosive actress, planned an elegant death. Flowers on the pillow, candles lit. She would be found beautiful and serene. Instead, the story goes, the pills made her sick. She died on the bathroom floor. Undignified. Grotesque. Funny in the way that the suffering of women, the entertainment industry, has decided not to respect, is always somehow funny. That story is a lie. It was invented by a Hollywood columnist named Kenneth Anger in a book called Hollywood Babylon, published in 1959. Kenneth Anger was not present. Kenneth Anger had no sources. Kenneth Anger made it up. The coroner's report tells a different story. Lupe Velez was found in her bed. She had taken the pills. She had written the letters. She had arranged the flowers. She had died the way she intended to die. With dignity. Hollywood preferred the other version. Hollywood told the other version for 50 years. Because the real story of Lupe Velez is not funny at all. And the entertainment industry has always been more comfortable with the joke than with the truth. Maria Guadalupe Villalobos Velez was born on July 18, 1898, in San Luis Potosi, Mexico. Her father was a colonel in the Mexican army. Her mother was an opera singer. She was the fourth of 6 children in a family that moved constantly as her father's military postings required. She was educated at a convent school in San Antonio, Texas, where the nuns found her simultaneously gifted and ungovernable. She was fast, loud, physically fearless. She could dance before she could read and performed for anyone who would watch from the time she was small enough to fit on a tabletop. When her father died and the family's income disappeared, Lupe Velez was 15 years old. She went to work. Not in film, not yet. She worked in a department store in Mexico City. She sent money home to her mother. She danced in local theater productions on weekends because dancing was the only thing that made the rest of it bearable. By the time she was 18, the dancing had been noticed by the right people. By the time she was 22, she was performing in Mexico City's most popular revues. By the time she was 25, she was in Hollywood. Hal Roach signed Lupe Velez in 1926. She was 27 years old. She spoke almost no English. She learned it the way she learned everything, quickly, imperfectly, and with an energy that made the imperfection irrelevant. Her first major role was opposite Douglas Fairbanks in The Gaucho in 1927. Fairbanks was one of the biggest stars in Hollywood. The film required her to be fierce, physical, and uninhibited. She was all 3 things without being asked. The American public had a specific appetite in the 1920s for a certain kind of Latin performer, passionate, exotic, temperamental. The studios had a name for this appetite and a product to fill it. They called Lupe Velez the Mexican Spitfire. Not her real name. Not her chosen name. A marketing label applied by a studio publicity department that understood what it wanted to sell and had found the perfect vehicle. Lupe Velez was 27 years old and did not fully understand what being a marketing label would cost her. The film career that followed was real. She was genuinely talented. Her comic timing was exceptional. Her physical comedy was precise and dangerous in the way that real athletic ability makes performance look effortless. She made the Mexican Spitfire series of films throughout the late 1930s and early 1940s, 8 films built entirely around the persona the studio had constructed for her. The persona was a joke, a hot-tempered, accident-prone, malapropism-spouting caricature of a Latin woman. The audience laughed. Lupe Velez performed. Every performance required her to embody a version of herself that had been designed by people who found Latin women amusing rather than interesting. She did it because it was the work she was given. She did it because the work she was given was the only work available to a Mexican actress in Hollywood in 1938. She did it because she was supporting her mother and her siblings, and the department store in Mexico City was not an option she intended to return to. She did it with a professionalism that the people laughing at the character she played never acknowledged. In 1929, she met Gary Cooper. He was 28, she was 30. He was tall, quiet, already becoming the most American of American movie stars. She was none of those things. They were completely wrong for each other. They were together for 2 years. The relationship was passionate and destructive in the way that certain pairings are destructive. Each person reveals the other's worst self while being unable to stop. The studio disapproved. Not loudly. Studios in 1929 did not loudly disapprove of their stars' relationships unless the relationship threatened the marketable image. Gary Cooper's marketable image was American heroism. Lupe Velez was not American. The studio communicated its preferences through the publicity department, through the fan magazines, through the carefully placed stories that framed Lupe Velez's temperament as a problem and Gary Cooper's distance as self-preservation. She was the Mexican Spitfire. He was an American hero. The narrative wrote itself. They separated in 1931. Gary Cooper married a socialite named Veronica Balfe in 1933. Lupe Velez told a reporter she had wanted to marry him. The reporter published it. The studio noted it. Nobody helped her. In 1933, she married Johnny Weissmuller. He was 29, she was 34. He was Tarzan. He was also exactly the kind of man who needed to be the most important person in any relationship and had chosen to marry a woman who was constitutionally incapable of being anything other than the most important person in any room. The marriage was violent. Not one-sided violence. Both of them were capable of escalation. What was one-sided was the public narrative. Lupe Velez was the Mexican Spitfire. Her anger was a joke. Her pain was the punchline. The gossip columns described their fights as entertainment. The same fights in a different marriage might have been described as domestic violence. In this marriage, they were described as Latin temperament. They divorced in 1938. Lupe Velez had been in Hollywood for 12 years. She had made 37 films. She had been marketed as a caricature for most of them. She had not been taken seriously as an actress for any of them. She was 39 years old. In 1944, Lupe Velez was pregnant. The father was a 27-year-old French actor named Harold Mayesh. He refused to marry her. She was Catholic. An unmarried pregnancy was not something her faith permitted her to accept. She asked Mayesh repeatedly. He refused repeatedly. She was 45 years old and alone and pregnant, and the studio system that had employed her for 18 years had no mechanism for helping her. There was no counseling, no support structure, no acknowledgement that the woman who had made 37 films and generated enormous revenue was a human being in crisis. There was only the contract, and the contract had no provision for this. On the night of December 13th, 1944, Lupe Velez arranged her bedroom carefully. Flowers, candles, letters written to her family, to her friends, to Harold Mayesh. The letter to Mayesh told him what he had done. She took the pills. She was found in her bed the next morning by her secretary. The coroner's report documented exactly what was found and where. She was in her bed. She had died as she intended to die. The letters were collected. The story went to the press. And somewhere between the coroner's report and the newspaper columns, the truth was replaced. Kenneth Anger would spend 15 years constructing the alternate version. The grotesque version. The version that was funny. Hollywood found the funny version more useful. A woman who died with dignity after being failed by an industry that used her for 18 years and gave her nothing when she needed something was a story that required accountability. A woman who died absurdly was just a punchline. Hollywood preferred the punchline. The lie Kenneth Anger told in Hollywood Babylon in 1959 has been repeated in articles, in documentaries, in casual references, in conversations, in every medium through which old Hollywood history is transmitted for 60 years. The coroner's report has been available for 60 years. Nobody checked. Or rather, people checked and chose the better story. Because the better story was funnier. Because Lupe Velez was the Mexican Spitfire and the Mexican Spitfire was a joke. Because the entertainment industry that invented that label and applied it to a woman who deserved better was more comfortable laughing at her death than accounting for her life. The cruel irony at the end of Lupe Velez's story is this. She spent 18 years performing a caricature that the studio system had built for her. She performed it professionally and brilliantly, and with more skill than the people paying her to perform it ever acknowledged. When she died, the studio system that had built the caricature applied it to her death. She could not even die as herself. She died as the Mexican Spitfire. Grotesque, absurd, funny. The real Lupe Velez, the woman who sent money to her mother from her first department store paycheck, who learned English in months, who made 37 films in 18 years, who asked a man to marry her and was refused and faced that refusal with the only options her faith and her era permitted, was never the subject of any story Hollywood chose to tell. The joke was easier. The joke is still being told. The coroner's report is in the Los Angeles County Archives. It has been there since 1944. It says she was found in her bed. That is the story she chose. Hollywood chose a different one. She deserved better than that. She deserved better than all of it. Did you know the truth about how Lupe Velez died before today? Tell me in the comments what you think about how Hollywood treated her story.